That's the one.
Hey everyone, welcome to our second episode of 3DMs in a Tavern. Today it's me, Spy, and
Hello.
our very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Janet, the director of World Anvil. I'm also an opera singer, a writer, and a world-building advice giver, and I guess a wrangler of cats.
So many things.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. So, in kind of conjunction with World Anvil's new release of Heroes, we wanted to
drop this morning. Well,
I know. I'm so excited. We just wanted to talk about all things world building, character design, and all sorts of fun stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm up for that.
Okay, so
for those of you who don't know,
yes.
Why don't you explain just like quickly what World Anvil is?
Sure. So, World Anvil is a specially designed world-building wiki on steroids. That's the easiest way to describe it. So it's imagine a world-building wiki, right? But it's all the templates are specially designed to prompt you with world-building questions to help you create more and create deeper if that's what you want to do. We have a rigorous timeline functionality. We have astonishing interactive maps functionality, which means that your players or your readers can go and explore your map and interact with your map. So that means you can click on Google's map style pins to open articles, this kind of stuff. Basically it's everything you need to build your world, to keep it private if you want to keep it private, or to show it off to your fans.
And I, for one, can confirm it is a fantastic tool. Actually, I had a friend recommend it to me, right when it was starting out, and I looked at it and it seemed too fantasy-centric for me, so I just thought, whatever. And then another friend of mine in October said, hey, have you heard about World Anvil? It seems really cool. And I said, that rings a faint bell, but I might as well check it out again. And I looked at it, and it had become so much better and bigger, and I thought, man, why didn't I join this earlier? So I went and I joined. I was a freebie for like about a week. I got an apprenticeship with Debug, who runs the World Building magazine.
Yeah, that's right.
Like another week, and then I finally caved. I'm like, all right, you know what? Screw this. I need a guild membership.
Yeah. And I have to say, your world on there is absolutely stunning. I don't know if you've noticed, but I use the diaspora map an awful lot when I'm showing stuff off.
Oh, I actually hadn't noticed that a lot, but thank you. It is funny, though, you said your world is amazing, and I thought, which one? I have 5. I have 5 on there, and then one semi-world that isn't on there because it's a sort of a private project at the moment.
Right, sure. No, I mean, I see this from a lot of world builders, that they go through a couple of projects, and then they find the one for them, if you see what I mean, and that's the one that gets expanded more. So that's one of the nice things about World Anvil. You can create things, and you can experiment, and you can put things together, and then if you want to leave it in storage for a little bit, well, that's fine. You're not going to lose your notes. It's all there on the cloud.
Right. I tend to cycle through my worlds. Adrian is the one that I use for my campaign, which I'm hoping to get off the ground very soon. Should be in podcast form fairly soon. I know I said that back in February, and it hasn't come out yet, but
I'm so excited, dude.
It's gonna be awesome.
So Adrian is my D&D world. I have an arcane punk world named Sphera, which actually B knows there's a roleplay going on, like a text-based roleplay going on in a different server. That's very multiverse hopping, and we're in Sphera right now, so I get to show off that world. And all
it's very cool. Yeah, that was one of the biggest draws to me, if I can decide for just a half a second. When we started doing that, RP, I realized how world hoppy it had become, and I was like, this is an opportunity for us to show off all these things we've done. And I knew, so I was like, I really think Sphera might be fun. I'm like, yes, because I had read the articles when he put them out, and I was like, yes, please, I've been waiting for so long.
What I think is really fun about Sphera in in the Thybus Cafe roleplay is that because of the way that Sphera's magic works, like I wrote an entire big article about the quantum mechanical mechanisms that define magic in this universe, and it's very different from standard like D&D magic, which is what all the rest of the characters use. So
Right.
when we went to Sphera, my character from Sphera could use their magic, but nobody else could except for the planeswalkers, but that's a whole nother tangent.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to impose that limit where like these people are in a world where everyone around them can use, literally everyone around them can use magic, and they can't.
Yeah.
I have a lot of when I made the Frostwalkers, mostly because a lot of the people who were playing, this would be like their first real big campaign.
Sure.
I kind of stuck it to Faerun and the world that 5e created. I added my own places and stuff, so it's definitely enough stuff that I feel like having, articles on some of the custom towns, for example. Obviously, Timshal's a big deal for the Frostwalkers, but like, having those nice little articles about smaller locations is nice. But I have so much respect for people like Spy who could be like, hey, what if I just started from scratch and said, hey, you see this book? And throw it out the window.
Right. But actually, that's one of the things I love about world building and homebrew is that you can go as far as you want to, and it's all legitimate. Like, if you want to write a world, if you want to have a world that is like Faerun, but actually you've made your own little corner and they have their own drinks and there's like 2 monsters that are different, then that's fine. That's okay. That's legit.
Yeah,
you write it up in World Anvil, you build your campaign in Heroes, you have your stat blocks that you've built that you can use for the custom stuff you've made, and otherwise you use the SRD and you have a good time, which is really why we're doing this.
Right.
But then if you want to go, full Zen master world builder and build everything and the system and the world, and well, great.
Tikal.
Yeah, or Ethnos.
Or Ethnos is.
There's the Hummelverse, for example. There's a wonderful world on World Anvil right now, called the Hummelverse, which is a world of sentient tanks. So they're tanks.
So cool.
They run around and they do stuff, and the creator has created an RPG system that goes along with this. So you can play a sentient tank. It looks like, I cannot tell you any more about this because I signed a whole bunch of NDAs about it, but it looks like in the future I might be briefly playing a sentient tank, and I cannot wait. Gonna be so much fun.
I really like the lore behind the Hummelverse too. Like the actual reasoning why the tanks are sentient is very, very, very interesting to me, especially as someone who works with AI stuff. Like not works with, but like writes about AI stuff.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I mean the whole concept. It's so wacky when you hear about it, but the way she's managed to kind of normalize it and explain it and create it is beautiful, and it's a world I would never have thought about. And I love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that ties very well into like both questions that we just got, which is, Livy just asked how much world building is too much world building, how little is too little, and Pixie said how much mythology and lore is too much. Is there a loreness meter that I should be aware of? And my answer to that is there's no limit. There's no upper or lower limit on how much is too much. Like, me, I wrote an entire article about the way that warp drives work. I quantum physicsed out magic for my fantasy universe. There's no limit. It's just whatever you feel like writing. Whatever's important, obviously, but whatever else you feel like writing besides the key stuff, go for it. That's the whole point of world building, is you're doing it ostensibly for yourself and for people who enjoy it.
And if I can piggyback off that, from a DM perspective, you don't really know what's gonna become important. Like, the thing about world building in a D&D game is you can set up so many things, and then your players do a thing, and they're in the 9th dimension, and now you have to figure that one out.
Right. It's like Adventure Zone balance spoilers. Griffin talked about how he had an entire arc of the campaign plan for if Magnus took the I keep wanting to say Infinity Gauntlet. That's not right. The temporal chalice.
That's one hell of a crossover.
God, Magnus with the Infinity Gauntlet is a power I don't want to mess with.
Oh, holy crap.
But if he had taken the temporal chalice, Griffin had this entire arc planned out about how that would go down, and then Magnus didn't, and Griffin had to throw all his notes away on that.
Right.
And that's what I'm excited and also afraid that that's sort of what my players are going to do, because, I mean, playing with people you know very well is probably the best choice, because you know them well and you know how to get them to do what you as a storyteller want them to do. You know roughly where they're going to go, but there's still that element of uncertainty. Like, I've known my players I've known Lexi the longest. I've known her for like 4 years, and I still am a little bit worried that like she's going to say or do something in character that just completely throws off what I planned. And that's also exhilarating at the same time, because that might lead to an entirely new exploration of this world that I hadn't considered.
Exactly. And the thing is, sorry.
No, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's no problem at all.
I just wanted to add to the question. So Demetrius and I gave a talk in Finland. We were invited to come talk about world building, and I'll be giving the talk incidentally at Gen Con as well. And one of the main things about world building, particularly for RPG campaigns as opposed to books, is that you should build what you need. And what that means is you understand the scope of your campaign and your world. You build the big stuff, so you have big concept, but you only build specifics of what you require. But what that means is essentially you are building along with the campaign. So
Right.
you can plan what's happening in the world, because that's not going to change necessarily depending on how the characters interact with it. So if there is a plot unfolding that makes the world feel like it's living, whether the characters decide to interact with that or not, it's still going to happen, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if there's a dragon that's being raised somewhere from the dead, that's going to continue to happen whether or not your characters come to work with it. So that's the kind of stuff that you can plan in advance. And then once your characters pick it up as a quest and decide that they want to interact with that quest, well, that's fine. You already know what their intentions are. But with regard to world building specifically, build what you need. And then at the end of every campaign, at the end of every session, have a think about what they're going to go do next. And the best way to get information about that is to ask them how they found the session. Because whatever they found was cool, they're going to want to go interact with.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, in the first gameplay session that we had on the Escape Artists, I introduced a tavern, just like as an offhand thing.
Yeah.
Basically, like, taverns are the start of the quests and all that. And just to fuck with my players, I called it the Long Dong Silvers.
I love that. That's awesome.
And I'd written like an entry about it, not like a World Anvil article, but like I'd written something, basically like opening exposition about it, like an opening scene about it, and I went through it and my players lost their shit, and it was very entertaining. But they threw something at me that is kind of spoilers, but they want to go back, and I said, well, it's a tavern chain, so at some point you're going to run into one of these again.
Right.
So they will interact with things that you didn't expect. I mean, I wrote it as pretty much a one-off joke, but they really enjoyed that joke. So that's going to end up coming up at some point again.
Absolutely. And this is something that Guy Scalanders talks about. This is Guy the Great GM. He's the face of the How to Be a GM channel.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book. So he is an award-winning GM and a screenwriting lecturer, right? I cannot think of a better person to listen to when it comes to talking about campaigns. And one of the things he talks about is laying seeds. So laying in just things that you think are cool for no other reason that you think they're cool, and then seeing what your players think is cool, seeing what they pick up on, and then growing those along with the campaign. So one of the examples he gives is if your players kill a mook and they happen to find on the body a knife with a red handle with a funny insignia on it, fine, okay, it's a little question mark. But when they find 2 of those, or they find 3 of those, that's a plot.
There you go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of stuff you can play with. If they ask questions about it, you know you can introduce a second or a third. And you know what? I can think of 5 plots off the top of my head that could be. I'm sure you can too. Anybody with imagination can turn a couple of instances of weird things into a story, into a campaign, into something. And these are the kinds of seeds that you can lay down, see what your players are picking up on, and see what you want to reference to back later, because that's going to make you seem like the biggest, baddest, most plottingest GM in the world, even though you just laid some seeds and didn't know what they meant yet.
Yeah, I mean,
It's fair.
I'm again thinking back to the Adventure Zone where Griffin basically said, "Yeah, we started this as a one shot and didn't think it would go any further," and then the entirety of the balance arc came out of that.
Yeah,
he didn't even
and-
really have an idea of where it would end up until like 2 or 3 arcs in.
Wow.
Yep. I remember when you were talking about just throwing things in there and seeing what happens. My mind went. We go on call a lot in some of the servers we're in, and I remember we were talking about that text-based roleplay at like 1 a.m. and just like figuring out this one mystery that was going on, and we were just like, it was so funny because we were just like, someone put the gif of the guy with like the cork board, you know.
Yeah, the Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme, you know, the one where he's like panicking over the string cork board. And it was really funny. I love when things fall into place unexpectedly, because we were talking about like the original idea of that text-based role play, the Thibus Cafe, was that it was just like a place for our characters to interact. And then all of a sudden, over time, it just sort of turned into this world-hopping save the multiverse story. And we still had this one big mystery that we didn't. I mean, there was a Watsonian explanation to it, which was they're all here because they're here, because we want them to be here. But the in-universe story behind that was a mystery that couldn't really be ignored for very long. And so B and I and Shay were talking about it, and all of a sudden, I'd mentioned something about the Arcverse a while back, something very important about the Arcverse, and that's that there's a multiversal wanderer who calls itself the Bard. And all of a sudden, I think it was B that just went, "Oh my god, it's the Bard." And I thought for like half a second, and I thought, "Holy shit, he's right! It's the Bard. That's the reason that they're all here." And so
we just screamed at like 1 a.m. I remember Lance got on the call, the third DM in our usual lineup gets in the call. It's like, "Hey guys, what are you?"
Oh my god, it's the Bard! Poor Lance is like, wait, hold on, what?
It was so funny. But that's the beauty of storytelling, is when like those little pieces fall into such a weirdly perfect place. And I love that.
I have an idea of where I want my campaign to go, and I have an idea of what it's going to take to get there. And all of my players' backstories, or at least most of them, work very well with what I have planned. But at the same time, there's always the potential for, like you said, just this weird offhand thing, like the knife handle or whatever, to completely derail it and take it in a totally different direction.
Right, or even just be a red herring, or like a weird thing in the world. Because the beauty of RPG campaigns, as opposed to books, is that they're not static moment, and they're not static storytelling. They're storytelling with many elements, and there will always be these little mysteries that come in.
Right.
Yeah. And sort of going off of that, using that as a diving board, I have been for a little while. I've been a little worried about, I have a lot of things, a lot of different story elements that I'm trying to basically piece together and connect for my campaign. There's the old gods, which I have pages about on Adrian, and there's the celestial and chthonic gods, and that whole war between them, and then there's the Kasaito, and basically I'm worried that it's getting too close to what I call Isaac syndrome, which is, that's a story behind that. Basically, throwing throwing too many things into one story that it becomes unreadable. And I guess an example of that would be Homestuck. And I love Homestuck. It's a pretty good story, but at a certain point there's just too many elements and it's too non-linear to keep track of very
Yeah.
easily, which discourages a lot of potential readers. I got through it all right, but there's a balance between how many discongruent elements you can throw in and how coherent the story is.
Definitely. I mean, I was talking to Eran Eviram, who is one of the writer behind the webcomic Up to 4 Players, and also a big name in the RPG scene. And he was saying that for him, the key to that is have one buy, have one weird thing, and then all your other weird things can spin off that weird thing. And then everything, however weird it gets, however idiosyncratic it gets, it's all got one source, which means it's more trackable and it's more believable in a way.
Right. And I have that. I figured that out with the Adrian universe. I figured out, where all of this stems from, and it's the fact that gravity affects magic.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
That is what you call the buy. And
Right.
all of the weird shit in Adrian stems from that. I mean,
I think
I don't want to get spoilery, but
no, it's okay. Yeah. I think going to the text RP we had, I think our buy is like the multiverse, and the ability of a planeswalker would be the thing that stems all this other crazy storytelling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the nature of the multiverse, like specifically the Aether and its energy.
Yeah, that was fun. It is fun. I do have a few questions if we want to move a little closer to, I think, character work, because I think Heroes is, right. I think for as much as World Anvil is very much like the entire world you've created, I think Heroes specifically kind of is like, hey, don't forget the people in this world.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to give you one that part of the question that Livy threw in there, which is how much detail should I put into a random NPC? When should I stop? And I want to get into one thing I kind of realized is that for campaigns, especially if you're one DM who likes the buy of everything being a shared universe, so that way you have less homework.
Right.
If a character you put a lot of effort into is glossed over in one game, that's not to say that character's job is done. In another game, they could become your most important NPC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because do you know what? The people exist independently of the campaign. It's what I was talking about before with, the worlds continue. People continue to live their life. Plots continue to unfurl, whether the party engages with them or not. And it's the same with NPCs. So if you go into Heroes, we've actually created something kind of helpful for GMs, which is that you can fill in a really simple form to create an NPC. You create the name. You could drag in a portrait if you want to, if you have one offhand. You have 3 sentences and some hidden storyteller notes. And then you can decide, and for me, this is the most important thing, whether they are adversary, ally, competitor, neutral party, protagonist, or NPC. Now, that's really helpful because it helps you, at a glance, understand how they feel about the party. Now, of course, that can change. It's a drop-down menu. You can just select something different after a while.
Right.
But that is one of the most useful things. I think with NPCs, and this is something, again, that Guy says, basically, they need to have one character hook, a single motivation, which could be anything from make money to go off and be an opera singer to, just go home because I'm so sick of this day, or whatever it is. They should have a simple motivation. They should have a profession, because that helps you understand what they're going to be carrying.
Right, and what they bring to the story.
Exactly. And it also gives them a competency, because it's useful for the party to think of people in terms of competencies. So once they have a quirk, a motivation, a profession, you're pretty much done. And then, of course, how they feel about the party. It's not a terribly large amount of information, but it's strategic information. You don't need a full backstory. And then, of course, if you are an NPC who likes to do voices, a single note for yourself about what the voice is like. Now, that might be high and breathy. That might be Scottish accent. However you do voices, however you do that, just so when you look at those notes again, you can be like, oh yeah, he was a blacksmith that dreams of being a professional pianist. He hates the party because of whatever, because they hate pianists, I know, and he has a Scottish accent. And instantly, you know what you need to do. Now, not all NPCs need that little information, but I would say that's a great minimum amount of information.
That's the baseline. And then if they get more involved in the campaign, you can build more.
Exactly. But honestly, for the party, the most important information is their history. It's how they interact with one another. It's because otherwise the party doesn't really care. Like, if they got their swimming certificate when they were 12, party doesn't really give a damn. What they care about is that they know that this person helped them in the past, or they know that this person is their brother, or they know that this person is also going for the MacGuffin in the dungeon, right? It's the relationship with the party that needs the development, because that's where the gold lies, that's where the plot and the conflict lie. Right. And that's once they love this PC, because they help them, because they have a prior relationship, then you kill them and you get drama, or you put them in danger and you get drama. And all of these things, that's what's going to move your story forward. Right. And that all comes from the party's feeling.
Mm-hmm. Right. So almost more importantly than who they were before they meet the party is how they interact with them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, sure, give them a dark secret, but that dark secret is only relevant as how it relates to the party.
Right. Okay.
Now in books it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a writer as well, so when I write, it's very different, and it's much more important where they've been and what's put them into motion, because honestly the narrative in books sort of plays out in a different way. Yeah. But as far as the party is concerned, it's so protagonist focused.
I think the main difference between books and RPGs is that if you're excuse me, if you're writing a story start to finish, you more or less know where it's going the whole way through. Whereas in an RPG campaign, you get those curveballs from your players, and you're going to end up somewhere that you don't always necessarily expect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And
like how a text. Sorry, I was going to say like how a text post RP about chilling in a cafe turned into saving the multiverse.
Right.
Right, and those improvisatory elements is what makes RPGs so fun. That's why writers like playing RPGs. You know, it's completely different form of storytelling, and it's so fun.
Yeah, and it's also there's an improv group in my city that does, like, every month they do a session for their campaign, and it's an improv comedy show. And cool. I think that's one of the most defining elements of RPG storytelling, is if you choose it to be, it's a fantastic vehicle for improv comedy.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Fantasy cast goer.
I was gonna say I made up a gnome NPC for that tavern, the Long Dong Silvers, just to get the player who was in there to look at the cork board, like the job board, and see the plot hook. But I didn't give him a name. Yeah. And so she asked, what's his name? And I just panicked and I said, Norman with a G. His name is Gnorman.
That's hilarious. Right, exactly. And do you know what? They're the characters we remember from RPG campaigns. Like I'm playing this Saturday a Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign.
Ooh, cool.
Oh, right, yeah. Isn't that the one?
I'm really excited.
Is that the one where you're actually playing with the Wizards of the Coast folks?
Yes. So this is a Wizards of the Coast commissioned stream. We're playing with Guy the Great GM. We will be live on the D&D Twitch channel, which
so
is
cool.
Truly terrifying. It is so freaking cool. I'm so excited. I'm totally nerding out. I started playing D&D at 11. 11-year-old me is just freaking out right now.
I can imagine.
And I was like, what should I play? What should I play? Should I play this kind of character? Should I play that kind of character? And eventually I was
bring back from the vault.
Right, exactly. And eventually I was like, do you know what? I'm going to play somebody fun because I want to. And I ended up with a paladin mermaid with armor made of coral, but because it's made of living coral, it licks people. Just to see what they taste like. Just out of curiosity. So I trial played this character and grappled somebody, and then my armor started going mlem, 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 and licking them. And do you know what? That is everything to me. I don't care anything about anything else about this character. I just want to be somebody with armor that licks people, and it's gonna be fun. And that's why we play D&D, you know. And if you're having fun, the audience is having fun.
Oh, absolutely.
These are the, you know, that's engaging for people. So hopefully it will be enjoyable. You can all tune in and watch me with my licky armor. We'll be running giveaways in our Discord as well. Every time I roll a natural 20, we will do a giveaway.
Nice.
Not very often because my dice hate them.
Nice.
See,
Yeah.
that's what I like about my one-shot character, who I started him in a pirate-themed campaign, but I had to leave for various reasons. He's evolved into my one-shot character. His name is Zhetai Kuan. He's the only one who I have a profile for on Heroes right now. But he's a very fun character because I didn't have any like set personality for him when I went in, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just gonna play him as Cat TM. You know, I'm gonna give him all the typical cat mannerisms and see where that goes from there. And he's become such a very fun, silly character. Like, he has a serious backstory, but he's a very funny character because, like, he'll get the zoomies at 3 a.m. His instinct in a combat situation is to get as high as possible, whether that's standing on a branch or a
Goliath
or a Goliath party member.
We've played with Zhetai a few times on the Frostwalkers, and it's a treat to have Zhetai as a party member.
It's canonical that he will disregard his own safety for a pun.
It's true. There was the plot of our most recent episode we recorded, our Easter episode, involved like hunting down like chocolate eggs for, you know, obvious reasons.
Oh, that's so cool.
And Zhetai was the one who was able to sniff it out, but because chocolate is not good for cats, he was sniffing out poison.
Oh, Jesus.
It was great.
Poison! I told you it was poison!
But like, that's the beauty of RPG characters. And I mean, I have 2 characters on Heroes right now. I have Calem, my main NPC, and who's sort of become my poster child for all things RPG. I just love him to death. And the other and he's a bit more serious. I have a lot more of his backstory worked out, you know. But he can be kind of fun. And the other character is a hypothetical offspring child of Calem's with another character, and they're a multiverse hopping, note taking fire genasi elf hybrid, and their whole thing is just like, I joked about it with Spy when I was like, should I make her my second character? And I was like, you know what? Yes, because she's basically an in-character World Anvil.
That's what she is.
That's her character. She goes around the multiverse taking notes because things are interesting.
She's a Pathfinder. I love that.
Yeah. I realized that's such a good character to use like Heroes for, because the journal system is perfect for that, you know?
Right, exactly. One of the things that I've seen writers using it a lot for is getting into the POV of their world building, which sounds funny, but a lot of people world build top down and they forget about the boots on the ground perspective. And Heroes is absolutely freaking perfect for that, to understand what life is like for normal people in your world.
That actually leads me to a question, like the last question I have written out. And that is from a friend of mine on a different server named Lucasite, who asked what would be the first step of world building beyond vague conceptualization. And I think Heroes allows a very interesting answer to that, which is, like, as you come up with things, have a character and ask yourself, how does like make the most normal person in your world with Heroes, you know?
Yeah.
And as your cosmic world building things happen, how does Joe the baker react to this?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, my answer to that question is always, it depends what you're building. For RPG worlds, I know a lot of people like to start with a map. They found that very helpful. So once they have a map, they can click around and start to build locations. And on World Anvil, of course, what that is basically dropping in pins and writing placeholder articles and just giving things a name. And once they do that, they can go into these locations and start to think about who lives there and what it's like and what the geography has made the location become and what the history might be of the location and this kind of thing. And that's where the world building comes from. So that is one place to start. But absolutely, like, considering the boots on the ground, considering the hero's interface perspective is another fantastic way to start looking at the world, because you understand the different perspectives of different echelons of society, of the haves and the have-nots, of different people in different locations. And that gives you something really clear, that you can then use.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and just kind of singing the praises of Hero's character building, I remember when I started to build Calem, I was like, I know this character like the back of my hand. He's been my main character for about a year now. I can write any profile for him, and oh my god! And I remember
so much about the
messaging
World Anvil fields, like the fields you have to fill out for a character. It makes you think about aspects of the character you had not even possibly considered.
Exactly. Like, I messaged Spy at way early in the morning, just like, hey, I may have pulled an accidental all-nighter working on this profile, but I now know that. Calem hunches when he's stressed. So cool, worth it, I guess.
And that's, I mean, when we were building World Anvil, that was one of the things we wanted to do, and of course we've taken that into Heroes as well, is to help people expand their worlds without stressing them out, basically. So if you're building a fantasy city, great. All you need necessarily maybe is a vignette, a little bit of history, and I don't know, a name. Fine. But what you could do is you could include the imports and exports, because that could be a great quest. You could include a little bit about the government, because that could be a great quest. Ooh.
That's me, my bad.
Okay. And by prompting people with these to create this kind of information if they want to, it creates so many more hooks, it creates so many more questions and tantalizing story details that you can then use for your RPG campaigns or your books.
And the way that World Anvil's articles are set up is that you don't have to fill out all those fields if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And B, if there's a field that doesn't exist that you want to address, you can add it in the vignette with a header, or in the footnotes or the full footer or whatever. You can add it in at a different point in the article.
It's true. Yeah. And there's also you can go back, because I remember, because I've been doing stuff for my campaign. So there's a lot of stuff I know a lot about, but there's also stuff that's I threw it in there and because I needed a name, or because I needed a reason for something,
Yeah.
And it'll be fun to retroactively fill in that article on say the Night Council as more information about them is learned by me.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about, building as you go. If you write that there is a Night Council, and people are like, oh, I want to know more about the Night Council, and they start asking for rumors about the Night Council, well, you're going to give them rumors about the Night Council, aren't you? Because the whole art of DMing is saying yes and. So, but if they don't ask about rumors about the Night Council, well, then it's just a great piece of flavor.
Right.
And then when they come back and they want to know about the Night Council, well, you open that article and you write a little bit more, and then they know. I've seen so many living worlds on World Anvil, and that's one of the things it's really great for. That you can just sort of crack something open and expand it again.
Yeah, I have a knack for naming stuff. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but that's a thing that I'm good at in world building, is thinking about the general idea of something and giving it a pretty apt name. And so
cool.
But that's sort of a disadvantage for me in a way, because I'll name something and give it a cool name, and then I'll think, well, now I have to write about this. Shit. So I gave an offhand name. I was writing the article on the running star on Sphera, which initially started as just a name. There's a derelict space station orbiting Sphera, and the inhabitants of Sphera call it the running star, because they don't know what the hell it is until the far future, when they figure out what it is and they visit it and they refurbish it and all that. And I started writing, I looked at the history box and I'm like, oh, okay, I might as well write this. And the history box on this page is the longest box on the page. And it's got names like the Revenant Fleet, the Reverent Conquest, the War of Angels, the Collapse, the Shattering, things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, God, there are so many tangents here.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
you can just link other articles in, right?
Yeah, so what I love about World Anvil's, in relation to that, is that little button at the bottom, the little quill and ink button, where you can write the name of an article, select your template, write your notes about it, select your category, create the article, and then you have a draft that is linked, and you can copy the link, put it in there, and work on it at a different time, and it shows up in your to-do list. My to-do list is roughly 300 items long.
Right, but you'll never be stuck for something to write next.
Right.
Or in a month you'll come up with a whole new world, and then it's going to turn into 600.
See, that's why I invented Crundle specifically, is because if there's an idea that doesn't go anywhere else, I stick it in Crundle. Crundle is my cesspool world, and that's why it's so wacky and stupid. There is an in-universe reason for why it's so wacky and goofy, but the out-of-universe reason is, if I have an idea and it doesn't fit anywhere else, into Crundle it goes.
And never touched again.
No. Oftentimes, like, my friend suggested, what if there are goat people that guard an artifact? And I thought, oh, okay. That doesn't really fit in anything I have at the moment. This was years ago, but I might as well stick it in Crundle. And that turned into the goat people who guard the mystical sandwiches of Glarfindor and can be exploited via their addiction to rice.
Spy, you kill me with
I
half
like
of the
that a
things
lot.
you just say.
Right, but do you know what? Those little tidbits are great, and often in a serious world. Like, we all know this. In a serious world, it's great to have a little bit of light relief.
Oh yeah, a bit of levity anywhere, it's great. And that's why, like, the Diaspora, for example, is very serious. Like, it's optimistic, it's bright optimism, but it's very, like, hard science fiction, very gritty in the sense of, like, it gets down to business with the technical aspect of it. But at the same time, I've thrown in a couple of, like, goofy bits. Like, for example, in the 24th century, one of our first contact events is sparked by a probe that, because the name was a public vote and the commission caved on it, was named Proby McProbeface.
Had to be. Had to be. Yeah.
Or,
So-
I don't know how much I can spoil about this, but I penned an episode of Starhopper Radio, and one of my favorite jokes in that episode is there's a scene where there's a pretty serious thing that's about to happen, but no one in the crew knows it yet. And they're just complaining that nothing's happened for a while. And, like, one of the characters, sort of the audience stand-in character, just kind of goes, well, I'm just going to go back to my room and weep openly that you guys don't want to try tabletop games with me.
A little in joke for everybody who's like, for all of our audience overlap with, like, the Frostwalkers and 20SA.
Right.
Right. But then there's the thing of, oh, D&D exists in this world now. Oops.
Yeah. The Diaspora is basically a slightly alternate future timeline of our world. So pretty much all the things that exist in this world exist in there. And so it's nice to, like, make references to the very down-to-earth things that still exist in this universe. Like, when was the Recall takes place, and it's very interesting to, like, look at that and say, oh, hundreds of years from now, D&D is still a thing, or some approximation of it is still a thing. Very much grounds the universe in reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's instantly relatable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, it's a very human thing. A lot of things that sci-fi series and sci-fi genres sometimes forget is that, you know, people still play games, people still sit around and like to drink, people still do human things even in the future. Like, people won't stop being human. Even transhumans still want to do human things.
Right.
Right.
So
that's something I've explored in Arcverse a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
far down the line, spoilers, but when humans leave the universe behind, we're still driven by our curiosity, and so we accidentally fuck up one of our ultra multiversal experiments and reboot the universe.
Sounds about right. Yeah, exactly.
Because we're new at this and we're figuring shit out.
Right, exactly. And that helps audiences, that helps characters, that helps everybody connect to what's going on. If they're like, "Oh, that's a very human thing." I understand that, you know.
And
Yeah.
in one of the existing bonus episodes of Starhopper, there's a reference to David Bowie in the 25th century.
Huh.
I have one question that just popped in, and it's I know everyone sometimes struggles with writing plots for campaigns. So when that happens, what do you do to get over the writer's block? Any writing tips? I think what we just talked about is a pretty good answer. Like, find something seemingly goofy at first, and then pull on it.
Oh yeah,
But
find a loose thread and pull on it is probably the most effective way to come up with a plot.
And if you don't have any loose threads, make one. Cut some
Right.
threads.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of great cures. I don't know about cures, but a couple of great treatments for writer's block. The first is dig into your theme and dig into your genre. So look at your theme and figure out where you can go for that. And look at your genre and figure out where you can go with that. So if your genre is sci-fi, think about, okay, so what sci-fi things could I use? And I know it sounds very simplistic, but so I spent a lot of time reading books and thinking about plot structure, and I found it really helpful to look at a bare plot structure and figure out where I can put in the pieces. So start to think about the pieces of the plot, like who is the protagonist? What is the conflict? And these are the kinds of things where you can be like, okay, so I need a conflict and I'm in a sci-fi genre. What could be my conflict? I need an antagonist and I'm in a fantasy genre. What could be an interesting conflict?
Yeah.
And these kinds, so instead of sort of thinking, oh no, inspiration will never hit me, sit down and think about it logically. Think about the tools that you're working with. And for example, if you're in a sci-fi universe if you're in a fantasy universe and you want to go completely off-piste and be like, okay, well, I'm in a fantasy universe, but I'm stuck for ideas, I will have an antagonist who comes from another planet. There are other planets in fantasy universes, I assume. We see them from the Earth as we look up.
Yeah.
So somebody has somehow got there from another planet. You know, experiment with those kinds of things.
Yeah, I did that in the Frostwalkers currently. Besides our like special episodes, our main storyline took a pretty big divergence just for a little bit. We didn't want this to be long-standing, but like I'm a D&D nerd through and through, but I've just kind of been birthed to becoming slightly a bit of a Magic the Gathering nerd in terms of the story of that.
Oh yeah.
And that is a huge thanks to the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica.
Nice.
And when that book came out, I poured through it because, I mean, the 10 guilds work so well as backgrounds for characters and give instant plot hooks. It's just so fun. And I was like, you know what? I really like this setting. And I really want to do a fun, like, 2 or 3 game fish out of water story with the established fantasy characters who've lived in this town all their life and, you know the people, know the way the town goes, and fling them into this weird setting for them where, where in the water these merfolk are making shark crabs. like what how would a regular halfling, a regular, elf figure, how would they find their place, even if it's just for a little bit? And I mean, it's just fun. Especially in a homebrew setting, like I did that in a podcast, and in a podcast that can be a little bit more risky. But like if you're just playing at home or if you're just playing with friends, if you find like say Curse of Strahd interesting or the Guildmaster's Guide interesting, and you've been playing a homebrew setting, no one's stopping you from giving like a beam of light hits the party. There's an inventor on the other side, and he welcomes you to this other dimension.
Absolutely.
Right.
Funnily enough, I played Rise of the Rune Lords with Demetrius, and Demetrius cannot resist playing this stuff. So it started as Rise of the Rune Lords and became Demetrius' campaign, as he was like, well, actually, I've decided this is going to happen now.
Yeah, that's the beauty of DMing, is that it's all up to you. Like you can turn on a dime if you want to, as long as you find a way to like tie it into whatever you're going at the moment. You're good. You can go wherever.
Yeah. But
And that's not to say, I also want to make this point too, that like if you're stuck for a good plot, like what Janet said, look at existing plot structures. Don't be afraid of doing the same thing that somebody else has already done, using the same like structures that people have already made, because odds are they're tropes and stuff for a reason. People like them. People read them over and over in different incarnations for a very good reason, because they're good.
yeah, I mean, I have a book next to me which is 2 inches thick called The 7 Basic Plots. And this is an idea that's been around for a long time, that there are only a certain number of plots. But the other thing is that there are, within those plots, there are no bad ideas.
Mhm.
And what I would say with that is that, so I started a short story recently because I'm waiting for my novel to come up back from my alpha readers, and they're taking a really long time. And I was like, well, I want to be writing something, so I will just start a short story. And it started essentially as a dungeon crawl, and I was like, well, what can I do with this? This is stupid. But I kept going and I kept going, and I got to the end of the first draft, and I was like, actually, there is something in here. So its code name is Lesbian Dungeon Crawl, which sounds awful. I am aware of this.
I'd read it.
I would love it.
I mean, there are themes of love. There are themes of like what people mean to each other and what people sacrifice for each other, and this kind of stuff. And I started it thinking, this is stupid, but I can't think of anything better right now, so I will just write this in a kind of like huff. Okay. And actually, yes, it sounds like a stupid idea, but also it's like, with a bit of work, it's going to be something that I'm proud of. And I think when you feel like you have writing block, it's often not that you can't come up with ideas. It's that you're feeling very negative about those ideas. It's like, oh, I could do this, but that's stupid, and I could do that, but that's stupid. I think one of the tricks for getting over writer's block is to take time with those ideas and to nurture those ideas and see what potential there could be in there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, you can
Just
crash
find your
land
own
a spaceship, and you can crash land a spaceship during one of the characters' birthdays. I'm sorry, lads. I'm sorry. I ruined Sito's birthday with Ravnica. I'm sorry.
I cut out a like just for like 2 seconds, and I come back to talking about crashing. Yeah.
Did you miss Lesbian Dungeon Crawl?
No,
No, you
I
didn't
heard
miss
that. I heard that much.
Good.
But
I have to get that novelette out.
it's gonna be good. I'm sure it's already good, but it's gonna be better.
Yay, drafting.
But like and I just want to take a tangent here. Like the direction I'm taking with Starhopper, it started as like just this idea of, I mean, I have the screenshot somewhere, but I can also find it in the Calcia server. It was like the night after Christmas, or like it was Christmas Day Eve at like 2 a.m, and it was the 26th at 2 a.m, and I thought, what if I made a podcast that was an anthology series set in the Diaspora universe? Because I want to explore the Diaspora a bit more. And it took about a month for me to get from that to publishing an episode, because I wrote the pilot draft right then and there. I hadn't written anything serious in months, and then I wrote the pilot draft. I'm like, this is, I mean, it's not like a plot or anything. It's just a wake-up call on a spaceship at the end of the 22nd century. But to me, that's interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be interesting to other people.
Yeah. And I mean, so many weird off ideas. Maybe I love the idea of the vault, if you will, that all writers have, where it's like, this is a really good character. Damn it, why did my party pass this guy up? Okay, I'm going to put you over here and wait for the next campaign, or wait for my next group of friends who want to play in this world, and you could come back, and we'll see what happens then. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Funnily enough, I was talking with Nerdsmith yesterday, and particularly Angela McCain was like, I love Heroes because I can put all of those characters in there that just, they haven't found their home yet, they haven't found their project yet. I can put them in Heroes, and then I can go and put them in campaigns if I want to.
Right.
Yeah.
See, the dilemma I have with Heroes is that I mean, especially over the past years, but I've gotten better recently, but I'm notorious for flat characters. Like, I've never been particularly good at character development, and even though I've gotten better, the most developed characters I have are like 9 years old. They started in like 2011, and they've gotten to this point only through years and years and years of development. So working with heroes is interesting because I get to flesh them out. I get to flesh out characters a lot more and a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But one of the things I liked about heroes, particularly for an RPG perspective, but also from a writing perspective, is that we, as writers, we think of our heroes and our characters rather in terms of who they are. But sometimes we forget about the how do they interact with other people aspect. And that's what makes people memorable. Like, if somebody has a heart of gold and we think of them as a really nice person, but actually they're really grumpy until they've had their coffee, and that's how they affect other people, well, that's actually super interesting. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do in heroes that you can't necessarily do in just a character profile. Is you can take your character around to other people and figure out how they react. So when I was developing my character for this Wizards of the Coast stream is called L'huuna Zhetai, because she's a mermaid, right? And I figured that mermaids would have a thing about aspirated sounds underwater, so you get bubbles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I was trying to get into character, and I have not picked the most simple character to portray, particularly when you're doing streams, a very simple character with a single hook is much easier to portray than somebody a bit complicated. L'huuna is slightly complicated. So I was like, all right, I'm going to figure out how I interact with my other crew members. So I went onto their profiles and I started leaving comments. And I started commenting on what they'd said and the kind of things that she would talk about, and the kind of small talk she would have with them, and whether she would have small talk with them. And this is the stuff for me that's starting to build the character. More than just, okay, well, when she was 12, she had this formative event, and then she won her swimming certificate when she was 15 or whatever. Like,
Right.
That is useful, but it's not as useful as knowing how she reacts to people.
Yeah. Not my character, sadly, but my friend Jay has a very similar story about one of her characters, because we were going to make a one-shot, and she wanted to play this kind of merfolky character who was a monk.
Yeah.
And her name was Connie, because it was named after, like, the Hawaiian, a bit of an abbreviation of the Hawaiian word for, like, a type of stingray.
I can't help this. Was she a monkfish?
No, I wish. That would have been brilliant. That would have been brilliant. But as she started playing Connie, she just gave her this really funny, like, accent that you can't really pin. And then from there, she just kind of became the crazy scientist character, you know?
Nice.
This was set in Ravnica, so of course she was a Simic, and that's the guild who makes the shark to crabs. So she was one of the people who was like, we need more of those. We need bigger ones, crazier thing, you know? She was the one going to her party members and telling them, you know, you might be a good rogue, but if I gave you, like, flippers, you'll be even better. and by the time this character had finished one session, I sat down with Shay, and she just goes, you know what? I don't think she's a monk. I think she's an artificer. And she had to remake the whole character to be an artificer. And that's just what happened. That is the nature of character development.
Right, exactly. And as I've mentioned, I'm a plotter, so I always know what's going to happen. I don't always know how my characters quite fit in there. It's very
I feel that.
for us.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things during the drafting process that I focus on is how and why they are acting and reacting as they are. And that's always one of the things that I have to focus on. And often your characters turn out to be different people than you thought they were.
Mm-hmm. For every character who's perfect the way you write them, there's the monk Simic who turns out to be an artificer.
Right.
Because she wants to give people flippers.
Right, exactly. Which is a noble goal.
Yeah, of course. The more merfolk everyone is, the better.
Right, exactly.
But, like, that's just a fun one-shot character, you know? And, like, I think after 2 games with her, she, like, shouted during the middle of a session, you know what? I think this is my favorite character I've ever made.
Isn't that always the case, though? You know, you fall in love with the characters you don't always expect to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, Calem was meant to just be a pot in the pan NPC for a home game. And then when the Frostwalker started, I was like, you know what? I kind of liked this character's design. I liked his idea, because just the funniest little bit is his character came because all the nobles in our home game up until that point were the worst, like the worst kinds of people. They were money grubbing. Everyone wanted a piece of power. So when it
Right.
became my turn to DM, I asked the question, can we have one nice king?
No, they come from the Evil King factory.
Yeah, but then I was like, you know what? Not only am I going to make a nice king, he's going to be so nice that that's his defining character flaw. He's
Right.
so nice that he's the person who, if you ask him for $5, he'll hand you 20. And
Right,
also
and then
that 20
bankrupt
may
the
have been his
nation.
lunch money. Exactly. Like, that's his defining character flaws. He's too nice. And then I started with that, and then everyone kind of fell in love with him because everyone likes nice characters. And
Yeah.
within time, Calem became my main stand-in for all things RPG, because he was just a character who had like a really one-sentence concept of, he's the nicest person you'll meet to the point where it hurts him.
Yeah.
And also he's in charge of like thousands of people. and that just spun off into this character.
I invented a character for this text RP, the Thibis Cafe. Just completely offhandedly said, you know what? While my literal god of space-time character is out of commission, I still want to interact with this group. But how to do so? I kind of want to throw in somebody from Sphera. And so I came up with this idea of, okay, let's think. What era of Sphera do I want to take this person from? Let's go far future, specifically the War of Angels, when they're fighting an alien species. And I thought, okay, what profession do I want this character to have? All right, fighter pilot. I'm a sucker for fighter pilot. I'm a sucker for pilots in general, like as characters. I'm very fond of the charismatic, confident fighter pilot.
Ace fighter pilot trope.
Yeah, the flying ace trope character.
Yeah.
I will shamelessly admit that is my character weakness.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, I have like 29 different species that I can choose from to make this person in Sphera. Some of them don't work well, like you won't really have a merfolk pilot because they're literally just dolphins with, well, redacted.
It's funny because I know exactly what it is.
More flippers!
Not where you would expect them to be. I will say 2 words, and that is all you will get. Dick Lances.
Wow. Not safe for work dolphins.
Pretty much. But I thought, okay, humanoid. We're definitely going to want to go with something humanoid. Something with approximately humanoid culture, too, just so that the culture shock isn't too bad. Okay, well, if they're going to be a fighter pilot, they're obviously going to be part of the fleet, and the fleet is a very multicultural, regimented sub-society. So that gives me an excuse for, like, using human and goblin mannerisms in a non-human, non-goblin character.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we go kobold? I feel like doing a kobold, and Spheran kobolds are different than regular kobolds in a variety of ways, but I thought, okay, so I have this character. They're a kobold fighter pilot from the Revenant fleet in the far future of the Sphere. All right, let's throw him in there. Wait, hold on, I need a name. Let me think briefly about what kobold language sounds like. Kesal I Nishar. Kesal, offspring of Nishar. Yeah, all right, throw him in there. And they're part of the crew now. They're a member of this text-based RP now. And I've been figuring out what they're like as they go. And I figured out so far that they are very logical and regimented and have a very no-nonsense approach to problem solving. Whereas most of the other characters are content to basically, if something goes wrong, they'll run around with their head cut off, pretty much. And we had an incident like that within like the first hour of Casal's existence.
Tumultuous times on Thibis.
Tumultuous times on Thibis. and everyone else was just like completely losing it because they just come off of this multiversal, basically deciding the fate of the multiverse in this battle, and they were hoping for some, quiet times, some R&R, and then B threw in something else, some other chaos, and everyone was losing their minds, and Casal's just like, all right, everyone shut up and think about this logically for like half a second. We're not going to solve this problem unless you look at it as a problem with a solution instead of just sitting there running around with your heads cut off. And of course that got a very negative response from these emotionally developed characters. But it's what they would do. It's Casal's that in that moment I decided, yeah, this is Casal's view. This is Casal's personality. Is very like straightforward, set a plan, follow the plan, because that's what they've been trained with, is
right.
Improvise where necessary, but think about it as a problem with a solution.
And Casal very quickly became a member of the crew after that. As much as the first response was negative, he very quickly found a home within the rest of the group, which was nice.
And it was also fun to like introduce their ship's AI, OSHN, called Ocean, who's a very fun character in that, like, yeah, they have these typical like AI mannerisms, formal at times, but also they'll mix in like very informal commentary with that,
He called Michaela Twink.
yeah, they called Michaela Twink, which is objectively true, but coming from an AI, like talking about how, oh, there's an intruder, we have an Aether flash outside. Someone's just come through a portal. Looks like Twink knows them.
It was so funny. All right. As much as we could have you on forever and just keep talking about stories and all sorts of things, I think we've kind of hit our time.
Yeah, we've been talking for at least an hour so far.
Yeah. So
It's been really fun.
It has been. Thank you so much for taking up your busy day, because oh my god, today is probably crazy for you guys.
Oh yeah.
Quite manic, yeah. It's been really fun, guys. It's been so fun. And again, like, I love talking about stories. I love talking about DMs and the art of DMing and the art of RPGs. So this has been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
No,
thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much again. Yeah.
No, you're welcome. Oh, can I say one quick thing?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, please.
It's something that you guys probably don't know about yet, so I just thought I'd drop it in. So of course, that Heroes has come out, which is, as we said, a sort of campaign manager for everyone, for players and for audiences and for GMs. And that I'm doing this WotC stream on Saturday, so I don't want to toy with your intelligence about that. But what you probably didn't know is if you go to www.project-deos, that's DEIOS.com, you will find a teaser page for something in World Anvil's future. It is a collaborative project that we're running with Dungeon Fog and with Guy the Great GM and with Blue Sword Games. It is set to be something incredibly exciting, useful for story players and GMs. So I would encourage you to go and take a look, go sign up, and check out the teaser page. And you'll be getting more information over the next weeks about what that might be. I'm sworn to secrecy, but I can tell you that it's incredibly freaking cool, and I wish that it already existed, and I cannot wait, and I'm too excited.
I have heard about this before, and I have signed up, and it looks really cool. The most I know about this is that it's some overhaul of the map system, or at least that's part of what it involves, and I'm very much looking forward to that.
Hey, Spy, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? Because I'm going to do that like 2 seconds from now. We got to wrap up this episode now because I need to fucking check that out. All right.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Janet. Give Demetrius a cup of tea for us. Tell him to relax. I know he's had a long, long day getting Project H ready for release, and he's got many, many bugs in his future. They say 99 little bugs on the code. 99 little bugs. Take one down, patch it all up. 133 little bugs in the code.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the way it goes.
All right, this was so fun. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening.
We will talk to you guys later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to our second episode of 3DMs in a Tavern. With the release of Project H, or now known as Heroes, on World Anvil, me and Spy, and soon a few other members of our cast, will actually be making Heroes pages on World Anvil for some of our characters. The links to Zhetai, Calem, and Janet's amazing character for the Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign will be in the description if you want to go give them a follow and read their posts. This is just another way for us to connect with you guys, and I'm really excited about what this can mean. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Thank you again to Janet from World Anvil for taking the amazing amount of time from her incredibly busy day to come out and be here with us crazy DMs. It's really all I have to say. And also thank you guys so much for everything. I know things have been quiet with all the crazy stuff that's going on, and we're really thankful that you're all still here and listening. Love you all.